Hello, everyone. Welcome to Culturally Illiterate, a podcast where four friends overthink comic book movies. I'm one of your hosts, Matthew, not Jake, and my fun fact of the day is that I have yet to finish a game called Xenoblade Chronicles 2 since 2017, since it first released, and I still don't understand how its combat system works. Right next to me is Sean. Say hello.
Hello. Oh God, we've gotten rid of Jake. We forced him off. Yes, my name is Sean. I am also one of our many hosts. My fun fact is that Batman, according to the internet, can lift 800 to 1,000 pounds. What a man.
Much to everyone's chagrin, probably, I am still here, and I am still Jake. My fun fact's actually just that Batman and Robin, number 19 from the New 52 series, was the first comic book I ever bought for myself. Another fun fact is Matt told me he was going to freestyle the intro, and I'm a little disappointed he didn't take more liberties with it. He used my shitty stuff.
You failure. You absolute buffoon.
You did a lovely job, Matt.
I've been scolded for attempting to freestyle.
No,
so
I told you don't freestyle the plot. I don't care how you intro outro.
I'll do that the next time I host, maybe like 20 episodes down the line.
I think I like it more when Matt freestyles the plot over anything.
Wait, it was so many freestyle the plot when we didn't have a synopsis last time.
Who gives a shit about the synopsis? All right, let's move on.
I say anyway, we have another person who hasn't talked yet.
Who?
I'm your other host. I'm Jason, and my fun fact is that bats have recreational gay sex.
Now that is a fun fact right there. Anyway, in this episode, we're covering Batman, the one released in 1989, written by Sam Hamm, a wonderful name, Warren Shakaran, I don't give a shit.
Scarin?
Perfect. I'm going to get all the names wrong. Directed by Tim Burton and shot by Roger Pratt, with music done by the fantastic Danny Elfman, although his recent work has been... And all stars: Michael Keaton as Batman, wonderful. Jack Nicholson as the Joker. Kim Basinger. Did I pronounce that right?
No, Basinger.
Shit. Basinger as Vicky Vale.
Still Basinger.
Basinger. We're moving on from it. Robert Wall as Alexander Knox.
Oh, he got that one
and
right.
Michael... Shut up. Michael Coe as Alfred. Okay, so what's everyone's experience with the movie so far? I have personally seen it before. I've seen it when I was quite young, and I watched like a few clips here and there, just like, you know, as like I watched this movie before. Oh, it was really good. It's kind of like that. It's like, you know, nostalgia trips.
But you hadn't seen the full thing in a while?
Yeah, I haven't seen the full thing in a while, though I do memorize some of those lines to heart.
For me, I've seen the movie before. It's been a little bit, I think, since my teens. For reference, I am a decade older than my teens.
Yeah, you're old.
And I remember loving the movie when I was little. So, like, I had the Batman car, like a remote-controlled Batman car, and I also had...
Some people call that the Batmobile.
Fuck off. The Batmobile. Sorry. And I also had a Batman action figure, but I took off his hood, and he looked really fucking weird underneath, so I threw him away, but I remember that very vividly.
I've seen this movie a few times. I last saw it maybe a year or two ago. I actually saw it, fun date night idea. During quarantine, me and Priya made a bunch of, like, fancier versions of movie snacks, and watched Legally Blonde and Batman 1989.
What a double feature.
Oh, dude, it was great. It was a great time. It was a really good night. But that's probably the last time I watched it. Not to get ahead of myself, but fucking loved it every time I've watched it, including this time.
I've never seen Legally Blonde. If you were wondering.
Well, you know what?
But you know what I have seen?
Quick rec, Legally Blonde. Good movie. Really fun, funny movie. Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd is in Clueless. My bad. Oh my god, it's Owen Wilson's brother, Patrick Wilson, is in Legally Blonde.
Oh, Patrick Wilson? Interesting.
Yeah, dude, it's a really good movie. I actually really recommend it. Reese
not in
Witherspoon.
too much.
Good stuff.
I mean, listen, I love Reese. But you know what I have seen is Batman 1989. And as I've mentioned on this podcast before, I love Batman. Batman's always been my favorite fictional character.
You were waiting for this one.
I've been waiting for this one eagerly. It's not my favorite Batman movie, but it's in the top 3. And I adore this movie. It has been a few years since I've watched the entirety of it, but I've seen it plenty of times. Oh, also, before we get into the plot, I have some Danny Elfman fun facts if you guys don't mind me sharing, because I feel like as a more musically inclined person, this is where I can contribute to the podcast. Danny Elfman was actually the interesting thing about him is that he never like really wanted to do movie scoring. But Tim Burton was a big fan of his band, Oingo Boingo. Good band. Oingo Boingo. They're like a new wave band.
Amazing.
Good band. And so then when Tim Burton started making movies, he wanted to hire Danny Elfman to do the music, and he was very hesitant about it because he didn't have like formal training or any experience in classical arrangements and whatnot. Then he ended up doing it, and the rest is history. He's done plenty of great work, such as this movie, Nightmare Before Christmas.
That is what it's called. Yeah. It's like your favorite movie, and you fucking forgot the title.
I love that movie so much.
What is it called?
Nightmare Before Christmas. Which also, fun fact, he was supposed to originally voice both the singing and talking parts of Jack Skellington in that movie, but Tim Burton listened to him reading the spoken parts and was like, you gotta tell him this is bad. This is just really bad. He can't do this.
All right.
So that's my fun facts about Danny Elfman. Great musician.
Those were some very fun facts. All right. On to the plot. So Gotham City approaches its bicentennial.
I was wondering, I saw, so me and Matt, we have like an outline doc, and me and Matt, obviously I'm the one who usually reads the outline. Matt wanted to do it this time, but I have it open just so I can like pace and keep along, and I noticed that you, Matt, had bicentennial highlighted, yes. And I was like, he either just did that because like he just double clicked and it happened, or he does not know how to say that word.
I do not know how to pronounce that word.
Bicentennial.
Why the fuck will they put that word down? Just say 200th anniversary. Why?
I don't know, man.
Anyway, Mayor Borg orders District Attorney Harvey Dent and Police Commissioner Gordon to make the city safer by incarcerating, I said it right, mob boss Carl Grissom. Did I say that right?
Yeah, Grissom. You said it right.
Perfect. Meanwhile, Alexander Knox and photojournalist Vicky Val investigate sighting of a masked vigilante called Batman, who was targeting the city's criminals.
Ooh.
Both attend a fundraiser hosted by billionaire industrialist Bruce Wayne, who is secretly Batman, having chosen this path after witnessing a mugger murder his parents when he was a child. During the event, Bruce becomes infatuated with Val and interrupts their meeting to secretly pursue Gordon when he leaves on a police business.
Let me just say off the bat, Matt, you read it with so much more personality than I do.
I love the way Matt reads it, but it's also fun to
hear my mispronunciation.
You got most of the names right, and then you It's just funny.
Well, it's just, I don't know. I was just getting a kick out of you reading it with intonation. I usually am like so like rapid fire, and you like actually like have intonation, like reading things like in a fun way. It's nice.
He kind of almost reads it like a news anchor.
Yeah.
And Vicky Vale.
All right. So, I guess we just move on to like what we think about this part.
Yeah, that's usually how we listen. Matt, I know you're reading it, but it's still gonna be structured the same. Yeah. I mean, I was gonna kick off just by saying it has like a goated theme and title sequence.
Yes.
Which has been talked to death before. Everybody knows that. But it starts from there and just keeps going. That it is an incredible looking movie, and for my money, it is the best looking cinematic Gotham, or at least live action cinematic Gotham.
I totally agree with that. For example, there is a gothic tone throughout the city, so it is very dark, but the movie is still very well lit, and so you still get to see everything that's going on. And so there's no issue when like characters in black clothing, walk in front of like a black building. You still, very distinguishable from each other. And it's also interesting because not only is the city black, but like it's very like how should I say this? Like, what was that? Like it's like something punk. Steampunk. Yeah, it's like it's very industrial. It's like very like much like an industrial city, and all of its inhabitants wear black. All of them, except for Vicky Vale.
Which definitely makes her stand out. But it's definitely true what you said. Like, their silhouettes are always distinct. And their silhouettes and the way everyone's dressed complements the Gothic architecture of these really tall, oppressive buildings. You almost never see the sky. Which really makes it feel like you're just like the city's like huddled in, and desperate.
One of the things that I like really liked when you see that, I didn't really notice upon like watching it, as a kid, but like a lot of the shots that they have when they're first like getting across, like, showing you Gotham, they're all from like high above looking down. So you get this really oppressive feel of just looking down on everything and just seeing how just grimy it is and how like it feels like you're just looking down on everything. So it's not really like set. It's shot in such a nice way that makes it feel so oppressive, but also makes it like really gives it like this great character that I don't know you get really much of in some other films. Like it gives a lot of more of like a feeling to the city than most other films try to do.
Yeah, like in the new Batman movie, like the Matt Reeves one, it's very good, but this Gotham City blows that one's Gotham City out of the park in terms of style.
I mean, the fact of the matter is these are comic book movies, and comic books are very fantastical. They have over the top art, very expressive. I mean, one of the most iconic Batman artists of all time is Tim Sale, and he has such an over-the-top style. And when you look at this, it comes through. This movie looks and feels like a living comic book in a way that only really happens when you let an auteur with like a really distinct visual style and aesthetic like Tim Burton come through and make the movie and make it his way.
Yeah, I think it's also like a lot of that, his style just tends to accentuate a lot of those details in, the art in general. And also just like, it's just such a great combination to see somebody who's like visualizes like this kind of dark feeling to a lot of his work, and like seeing that kind of combined with, something like Batman where that's kind of like a part of it. It's such a great combination to see those two together.
Yeah, I like both of you said, Jake and Sean, like Tim Burton is like a perfect selection for like the visual style of a Batman movie. Like it so fits the character and the like themes of Batman, like the way he naturally does things, and this is no exception. And I think it's interesting to like contrast with, like, obviously we watched the Superman movies and we praised the sets and everything in that movie and how it's so different to fit this like Batman character as opposed to a Superman type character. And I think that's, like Jake said, like comic books are so expressive in their art form, and I think that those two movies are great examples of that, how the sets and settings really show the kind of vibe of the character.
And I want to go back to something you said before about silhouette and how the protagonist and antagonist...
You're just pointing at Jake and nobody knows who you're referring to.
If they listen, they know.
He talked about how everyone has distinguishable silhouettes. And I wanted to point out in particular both Joker and Batman silhouettes. They're both very distinguishable, especially Joker's, because, you know, obviously Batman has like the cape and, you know, the pointed ears. But Joker's is awesome because every time he's in shadow, he always has that very long top. That's not top hat. What kind of hat is that? Does he wear?
I don't know what it's called, but I know what you're talking about with the wide brim.
Exactly, it's a sexy ass hat, and he has very like square shoulders as well. So he's also very distinguishable. All right, moving on, and apologies for my pronunciations. Grissom sends his psychopathic second in command, Jack Napier.
Yeah.
Yes!
There
To
you
raid
go.
Axis Chemicals, nice name, to retrieve incriminating evidence, though it is a cover to have Napier murdered for sleeping with his mistress, Alyssa Hunt. Did I not pronounce it right? I thought it was Alyssa.
Alicia.
Shit. Although corrupt police lieutenant Max Eckhardt?
Bro, I got no fucking clue on that
That
one.
one was Eckert. It's Eckert.
Eckhardt, because they say it in the movie. I just trying to remember. Okay. Anyway, this Max guy arranges the hit on Napier by conducting an unauthorized police operation. Gordon arrives, takes command, and orders officers to capture Napier alive as a potential witness. Batman also arrives to catch Napier, who kills the lieutenant guy I mentioned before, as revenge for double-crossing him. During a scuffle with Batman, Napier topples off a catwalk and falls into a vat of acidic chemicals. Although presumed dead, Napier survives with various disfigurements, including chalk white skin and emerald green hair and nails. I didn't notice the nails. He undergoes surgery to repair the damage, and ends up with a rictus grin?
Yeah, rictus.
Never seen that word before. Driven insane by his new appearance, Napier, now calling himself the Joker, kills Grissom at his estate, massacres Grissom's associates, and takes over his operations.
I think something we didn't really necessarily talk about yet is both the introductions to Batman, the introductions to Bruce Wayne, your intro to Jack Napier, and then your intro to Joker. Because I think all 2/4 of those are so strong in that the first time you see Batman is like very early in the movie with that opening of him saving that family in an alley, stopping these muggers who robbed the family in an alley, obviously reminiscent to his own origin, and him gliding in the background in the night gives him this mysterious figure, and then in comparison to at the aforementioned gala, when he kind of just sneaks in behind Alexander Wall and Vicky Vale, sort of boldly and more in that you see this weird maladjusted, charismatic in like his humor and his like how he's so eloquent, but also like is so clearly isolated in the way he interacts with these two people, just like coming up behind them and making a comment. And then in with Jack, while being the second in command for Grissom, still kind of controlling the room, and then post being turned into Joker, seeing that kind of collected calmness unhinged as he laughs upon seeing his face. It's just every time you're introduced to someone important, you immediately get across like what that character is.
This is kind of like a little bit to add on to that, but the first time that you get to see Joker's face, which is you get to just him in the darkness in this like room and like him facing towards the camera before they actually reveal his like face and he steps into the light. It's just this neat, it looked so creepy, which was like really neat to see, because it's like obviously the white face stands out even in the darkness, but it's like all you get is that like his chin is facing down, you can see like the outline of his face, and it just looks so menacing despite the fact that you can't see any features at all. You can't see his like mouth, you can't see his eyes, it's just the outline, which was fantastic just to see in that moment right before you can actually like see what his face actually looks like.
I am also going to add on to what Jake said, and I wrote in my notes, Batman has a John Wick entrance. Basically like how when they first introduce him, it's not through like what he does, it's through the words of the criminals who just robbed the family. And there's basically they're talking about, even though they don't really believe in him, one of the criminals is still very much freaked out by the idea of him. And then he shows up as like a stiff chess piece, like, you know, how do I say this? It's like, imagine like a chess piece in shape of like a Batman signal and just like putting that down slowly. That's how stiff he was when he floated down, but it was still amazing. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, what you mean. It's.
I'm not good at explaining this,
but it almost comes across looking like, obviously, there's a lot of imagery for Batman kind of compared to a gargoyle, and it almost looks like he's just a flying gargoyle.
Oh, okay, never mind. Ignore what I said before.
No, I was building off of what you said before.
Oh, never mind.
Matt, you discredit yourself a lot. You also gave me the credit for the silhouette thing earlier, and I know I mentioned that, but also that was something that you were saying throughout the movie. We're like making like comments on the use of silhouettes, and then I say it, and you're like, Jake.
Well, you brought it up, so I had to.
I know. I'm just saying, give yourself some credit, man.
But yeah, like and then you actually see him fight, and it's very much like a how do I explain that fight? Because he mostly just like opens his cape up and like freaks them out. You know what I'm trying to say? He
uses, and this is a really good representation of, I think, one of the strong suits in most Batman media is when he uses theatricality to his advantage, to intimidate. You know, that's a 2-on-1 fight, and obviously he's got the gadgets and he's trained, and they're just two like crazy mugger guys or whatever. But it's part of just the visual identity of the character, as well as I think what makes his action with the Batman character interesting is the theatricality of it with the cape, and the like kind of power posing that he does a lot with like the fists in the air and stuff.
All right, we're gonna move on to what we think about the whole scene at Access Chemicals. So, what do you guys think?
I mean, I think his origins. I think that scene in general is a really well depicted origin. If you're gonna do it's the classic Joker origin for the most part. In terms of like he's had multiple, but that's the falling into the vat of acid is the most famous. But I think it's pretty tense, and like you feel the tight corners of the chemical factory.
Oh yeah, especially as like they're shooting parts of the chemical factory, like the cops are shooting everything, and so you kind of see like everything's coming in, all of the acid is like breaking through into the facility, so it's kind of just neat to see. It's like things just getting more and more claustrophobic.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts. I first of all agree with what Jake said, that it's, you know, a good depiction.
I'm liking all this validation from you guys tonight.
Well, I was gonna build off of it, because I think I like that it kind of like it does the classic Joker story, but it kind of does its own take on it, where like, you know, like the classic story is like the failed comedian, and then he goes and he has the Red
Hood gang,
yeah, the Red Hood gang, and so on. And this does its own version where it's still largely the same, but it's kind of its own little take on it. And I also, there's a part in it where, you know, when he first starts falling into the vat of acid, and Batman catches him and like holds him up for a while to save him from the acid. And I think that's like, I always think of that scene because I think it's such a good showcase of Batman as a character, to like show him that like, even though this is the guy that he's, you know, opposing, and that's the threat in the scenario, he's still like, he's trying to catch him from the acid, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I articulated that well.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, you did, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, can we also talk about like just the way that like it just builds up Batman as a character, how he just disappears when you just look away for a second, and basically like he'll be in front of you, as soon as you look away, he's gone. And then like there was this awesome shot of Joker trying to run away from the police, and then he was like climb up some stairs, and as soon as he like, you know, reaches the tip of the stairs and walks away, you see something move in the background. It's like it's Batman. He was standing there the whole time just stalking Joker. It just made him seem like a apex predator, you know what I'm trying to say? Like he's in his element.
And it's such an effective trope that it's subsequently used in like every other Batman movie. There's usually at least one like, oh, where'd he go? Like it's just so quintessential Batman at this point. But you're talking about Batman 89 kind of almost reinventing the wheel in terms of how to visualize that and do it effectively with the smoke bombs too.
And I'm going to say another thing. I'm going to bring up silhouettes again, because it's another big thing about this entire scene is that you don't really see like the people first. You see their silhouettes either through like the well-lit fog, like their shadows are showing through the fog, or they're showing through like the windows. And it's really, really cool. These are really, really beautiful shots. And yeah, that's really it. It just adds to the style of this entire movie.
And if I can spin off, I kind of wanted to, in regards to the question you prompted about our thoughts on Joker's origin, something I kind of wanted to put out there and see what everyone's thoughts are, is what I really appreciated about the movie was it kind of takes a different approach in terms of, at least initially, it kind of is, you begin the movie with like, and to an extent continue throughout it, from the perspective of Alexander Knox and Vicky Vale, this like investigative journalistic perspective of trying to figure out who is Batman and who is Bruce Wayne, and even as we know the one and the same, and those protagonists don't, and they try to piece together those things separately, you're piecing together how those things come together as one. And I think it's an interesting angle that, well, eventually kind of dips in it's how important it is later in the movie. I would almost like to see done again, because I think it's a unique thing that other Batman movies haven't done. In this like almost outside perspective, it kind of doesn't frame, it frames Bruce / Batman as like being observed rather than being the protagonist. He's almost secondary. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think that kind of goes for the same stuff we'll see when we talk about Batman Returns, and that's just a really different take and it's weird to say different because at this point the only other live action Batman has been the Adam West one, but compared to things we will further down the line, it is a unique way to frame the Batman story than other filmmakers have taken.
Yeah, it is very interesting that at the beginning of the film, you know mostly everything about the Joker's origins, but you don't know anything about how Batman started. And yeah, it is a very interesting take on telling the story of Batman. And yes, I wish they would do something like that in the future. No one else has anything to add?
No.
Perfect. Let us proceed forward. Moving on to the plot. Batman researches a way to stop the Joker from terrorizing Gotham with hygiene products laced with Smilex. Did I pronounce that correctly? Awesome. A deadly chemical that causes victims to die laughing. The Joker soon becomes obsessed with Vicky and lures her to a Gotham Museum of Art, where his henchmen destroy the art within. Batman arrives and rescues Vicky before taking her into his Batcave, providing her with all his research on Smilex that will allow the city's residents to escape the toxin. Conflicted with his love for her, Bruce visits her apartment intending to reveal his secret identity, only for Joker to interrupt the meeting. I thought it was going to be more than that, but never mind. The Joker asks Bruce, "Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?" Which is an awesome line, which Bruce recognizes as the catchphrase used by the monker who killed his parents. The Joker shoots Bruce, but he survives thanks to a serving tray hidden underneath his shirt. Bruce escapes while the Joker is distracted. At the Batcave, Bruce reminisces on his parents' murder and realizes that the Joker killed them.
There's a lot to unpack, I think, but I kind of want to say, because you mentioned the pale moonlight line. So I don't have a favorite Joker line because mine is "never rub another man's rhurbarb."
That is a good line.
And there's a lot of great Joker lines like the oh my god, I gotta think of it.
I think that, I mean, have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight is like a classic. You know what I mean? Like it's just a hard line to get off before you shoot someone. But I'm trying to think if there's any other ones that I thought were funnier.
I just pulled up a list of great Joker lines from the movie. Decent people shouldn't live here. They'd be happier someplace else. Great.
That's a bar.
I've been dead once already. It's very liberating. You should think of it as therapy. That's right before he kills Grissom.
Oh, you know what? I think that one's my favorite. That's the one. That one, when he said it in the movie, I was like, I want to remember that one, and then I forgot.
Wait till they get a load of me. That's a good delivery, but the line in and of itself.
I didn't realize one of them was "This town needs an enema."
Yes, it's so good. It's so good.
I was trying to think of that. I was like, that was the line I was trying to think of. I loved the way he said it, and how he was like ranting about how Batman's gaining all his press.
"I'm of a mind to make some mookie" is great. What is that? The only thing I can think of is that's right after he sees the picture of Vicky and becomes infatuated. So I think he was going to jack off. "I'm of a mind to make some mookie," but like that's not a saying. What is mookie?
Okay,
Well,
you know what? I'm gonna look that up. What is mookie?
This is like
He wanted to go pull his pud. Come on.
well, this is like much later in the film, but it's not like too like dense in story, so I'll just bring it up. He basically says like he like forms like phrases together because they sound good together. I think that's what he says. So a lot of stuff what he says don't make sense. He just likes the way it sounds, so he will say
And
these
that's
things.
what I love. So Jack Nicholson is so perfect in this role, and every single scene, your eye is just drawn to him. And some of that has to do with the framing. Obviously Burton and what's his name? Pratt. Yeah, Roger Pratt, the cinematographer, do a great job in the movie. But he is so good. There's so many memorable lines. All the deliveries are perfect. Memorable moments with like the fun kills, like the Joy Buzzer kill or the Quill. But
Joy Buzzer kill is so good.
oh yeah, but he's so nonsensical in the best way, in a way that I really think honors like the character's appearances in comic books. And that, like, he doesn't... His motivations are, like, really thin, but in a way that just makes him seem crazier. And he just says things. Like you said, like, he just is like, this sounds cool. So he just says it. And he just does things. And it's so almost improvisational for the character. Not saying Nicholson improv, but, like, the character's written like he's almost just coming up with shit as he goes along. And he's just so, like, almost like a slave to the bit once he realizes he looks like a clown. And it's such a way that it makes him such a compelling villain, because you just don't know what he's going to do next, because sometimes he's going to burn someone down to their skeleton with a joy buzzer, and sometimes he's gonna play Prince music and graffiti paintings in a museum. Like,
shout out Prince, man.
Unbelievable to get Prince and Danny Elfman on doing this movie.
R.I.P.
Unbelievable.
R.I.P. But I do want to talk about the joy buzzer kill though, because I think that, to build off of your point, I think that really shows how well adapted he is in this version. Because, you know, it shows how fucking crazy he is, because he, in a room full of people, confidently just burnt someone down to their skeleton, like you said, and he's just cracking jokes the whole time. Like, he's making dad jokes. He says, you know, he got a little hot under the collar. Like, he's cracking jokes and talking to the skeleton as if it's still alive.
Haven't you ever heard of the healing power of laughter?
Exactly. Like, it's so well done in showing how he's just purely off the deep end and purely driven by what makes him laugh and, you know, creating havoc.
Do you know what my favorite thing about that part was? When he's interacting with the corpse. You know how like, you know, when some movies or shows, they show like crazy people talking to like dead people or inanimate objects. Instead of just like, you know, reacting what they say, they just reiterate what they say, right? Mm-hmm. Joker, while he's like walking around this corpse, is like making like all these different facial expressions as if he was reacting to what the corpse was saying. But he can't say anything because he's a burnt up corpse. But it just adds so much to his personality. It's amazing.
As if he's reacting in real time to things being said, but it's just a fucking corpse. Like,
exactly.
Like said.
And because it's Jack Nicholson, it's 10 times better.
Yeah, Jack Nicholson, I mean, everyone knows he's a legend, but this is such a good role for him.
It is.
I was just saying, that's why for my money, I think Keaton's perfect in this role. And one of the things I like about this version of Bruce, I like my Bruce Wayne to be a little bit of a fucking weirdo, and he's definitely got that going on with like the scene at the dinner table where it's initially you just see the two of them and it's close up so you can't tell how far apart, and then like reveal that they're sitting on opposite ends of this long ass dining table, and he has to like get up and like run half a mile to get her salt.
Right, this dining table,
but it doesn't even register to him as weird because he's so not used to having. And like if you look, the room is like kind of worn down because it's not necessarily like it was a family dining room, so he doesn't have to upkeep that part for a gala at the mansion. And it's so how lonely and like out of practice being a normal human he is, and then that comes back around with when this guy is so confident to get into a bat suit and like hold a criminal up to his face to say I'm Batman, and then he goes to tell the woman he loves to tell Vicky that he's Batman, and he like can't do it, like he can't get the words out. Then that whole sequence from that leading into Joker's appearance there, and then the encounter between Joker being upset seeing Bruce with Vicky, Bruce realizing that Joker/Jack killed his parents. Like the two of them are so perfect in that role, and Kim Basinger was very good as Vicky as well, but those two were absolutely like the highlights, these strong suits acting wise, I think, and they go off of each other so well with how eccentric Joker is and how kind of straight laced right up until the let's get nuts thing Bruce is. They play so well. It's such a compelling scene, you just can't take your eyes off of it.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been critical of Michael Keaton. I'm not a huge Michael Keaton fan.
How fucking dare you?
I'm a big Michael Keaton fan. He's perfect.
First of all, Birdman was one of the worst fucking movies I've ever seen, but we won't get into all that. I do, however, love Michael Keaton in this role because something that I think really impresses me is how he does almost play two completely different characters so well. Like there's a clear Bruce character and there's a clear Batman character. He has this, you know, brooding confidence when he's in the bat suit, and then he's not quite the same, you know, he doesn't have the same air about him when he's Bruce. He's just a weirdo billionaire who lives by himself with his butler. Like, it's not the same character at all, and I think, you know, Keaton does a incredible job playing two opposite roles so well.
I would agree. I think he's really good in the role. I feel like I'm going to be one of the very few that the only criticism I have is that I just don't like the way his face looks when he's like wearing the suit.
It's a little goofy.
It's a little goofy, and it's not. I don't think it's because of Keaton. I really don't. I think it's just because of the way the mask fits on his face.
That, I think it's just so stiff on him too.
It looks like he has to like scrunch his mouth a little bit so that it like stays up in the right position, kind of thing. So it just always looks like he's got to poop.
Sometimes he's intimidating, and sometimes he looks like he has to poop. There's some really weird shots of his face,
especially when he looks up.
One of the things I do want to add in all seriousness though is that like I really love that like throughout the movie, I know you were talking about the differences between Joker and Batman and how they deal with the eccentricism words. His eccentric nature. There we go. That's better. And like the one thing that I really like that this movie really does a good job at staying in it's such a great middle ground in terms of the tone, where like you have this eccentric goofy stuff going on with the Joker, but it never loses that threatening and like almost, I don't want to say like the tension, like this thriller-esque kind of like tension that's always there even when all this goofy shit is happening on screen. It finds a way to ride both perfectly, and that when things start getting funny, it's kind of like, oh, things are gonna get fucked up real quick.
You can be campy and be dark and serious. You still feel the desperation of Gotham City and things like that.
Because it rides that line, because he has these theatric, goofy clown images, and he's cracking jokes, but at the same time, he's still fucking killing a bunch of people.
And
like
it never loses that seriousness that it's like, yes, he is killing people. That's the whole point of why he's bad.
But yeah, that's the thing though. It's like perfect example of that is the tools he used, the circus tools that he uses. Like, they're so silly, but their use is very deadly. Like, for example, like what was, like, oh my goodness, I lost memory of like one of the first weapons he used. Oh yeah, the buzzer killer. Right? You
Joy
know what I'm
buzzer?
talking about?
Yes.
Joy buzzer?
The joy buzzer. Yes, I forgot what it was called. It's honest. The way he died was like so campy and fun, but it still killed a guy.
right, it's so gruesome.
Exactly, and you get to see his burnt corpse just lay on the chair, and so it's a very silly way to kill someone, but in the end, he still killed someone, so the tension's still there.
And if we can go off of this, and Sean, you were the one who brought up the idea of this, if I'm not mistaken, if I don't have short-term memory loss. And I think it's kind of crucial, honestly, to the overarching conversation of this podcast. And we've talked about this a little bit off mic, but I want to bring it up here while we're kind of on the topic naturally, is looking at how these movies evolve. And an important part of comic books and of superhero comics specifically, because comic books and superheroes are not synonymous. Those aren't, synonymous isn't the right word, but they're not one for one. There's a shit ton of comics that aren't superheroes. There's a shit ton of superhero things that aren't comic books. But within comic book superheroes, that is something, and superheroes in general, I guess, even if they don't originate in comics, camp is an inherent element of them. I would say camp, and for an industry that was really dominated by straight dudes for a long, and still unfortunately continues to be, such as comic books, queerness is another big part, and how that comes across, and you can't extract camp from superheroes. You're talking about people that are getting up in goofy costumes and fighting each other. Like, there's no, you can try to make it as ultra serious as Nolan did, or, which not, if that sounded like a dig on Nolan in the Nolan movies, it wasn't, or you can go as goofy as you want, like the West movies. But there's always going to be that element, and I think Batman 89 is this interesting response of, it's a pivot point for these movies, of, you had Superman 78 coming off of, and as well as the moment in Batman Adam West obviously were campy before it, but that was a movie that was an original movie, not based off of a TV show, comes in and says, like, how can we somewhat faithfully adapt the visuals of the comics, the camp, and the style, and it does, but then the quality starts to devolve, and then post in the late 80s, in a world where things like The Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen have been published as comic books, and people wanting to go to a more serious route, this is a way of pivoting into that kind of darker, more serious style, while still keeping that iconography and camp of comic books, because you just can't and shouldn't even try to totally remove that. It's just intrinsic. But I think this is an interesting movie, and seeing how it evolves in going from something like your Reeves and subsequent Superman films, which are a lot more smiley and upbeat, versus this one that has a more overtly I don't want to say damaged because it sounds corny, but damaged, like not mentally all there, both lead and villain. Sorry, that was a long ramble, but I think in general, Batman 89 is an interesting center point of how our conversations are going to evolve up to this point and going forward in the podcast.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's also nice to see that, like, again, you said, seeing like comic books and how they evolve in terms of like how they're portrayed in media is kind of interesting to see that, like, this is kind of a little bit of a turning point, going from like all of the rest of the movies we've seen have been really campy, really goofy. Maybe they've been lighthearted, but they haven't really been serious, and they haven't really been like going towards that darker tone, which this one tries to ride the line on when it comes to like its goofy elements, and plus keeping that like the camp, and then also trying to make sure that you get the point across that like it's trying to take itself seriously where it counts. So it's just interesting to see that like the evolution of that start to take place kind of almost in a way.
All right. Moving on. Vicky is taken to the Batcave by Bruce's butler, Alfred, who has been coaxing the relationship between the pair to bring out Bruce's human side. After exposing his secret to Vicky, Bruce reveals he cannot focus on their relationship with the Joker on the loose and departs to destroy the Axis plant used to create Smilex. Meanwhile, Joker lures Gotham citizens to a parade with the promise of free money. I believe exactly is $20 million, which is a lot. In order to douse them with Smilex gas held within giant parade balloons. Batman follows his plan by using his Batwing to remove the balloons. I almost said Batman again. But the Joker shoots him down. The Batwing crashes in front of a cathedral, and the Joker takes Vicky hostage within it. Batman pursues Joker to the top of the cathedral, and in the ensuing fight, he reveals that he knows Napier killed his parents and thus indirectly created Batman before the latter created the Joker, leading the Joker to realize Batman's Bruce. I almost said the other way around. The Joker eventually pulls Batman and Vicky over the balcony of the cathedral, leaving them hanging while he attempts to escape by calling a helicopter piloted by his goons, who throw down a ladder to him to climb. However, Batman uses a grappling hook to attach Joker's leg to the gargoyle. Unable to bear its immense weight, Joker falls to his death while Batman and Vicky make it to safety.
I kind of want to ask you guys how you feel about a couple key differences with this adaptation of Batman. The first being the decision to make Jack Napier / Joker be the killer of Bruce's parents rather than just Joe Chill.
I like it.
I'm just curious how you guys feel about it.
I like it because like it just connects the two characters more than they already are, and it's just I feel like it adds more than like takes away from like the dynamic between Batman and the Joker.
Yeah, I like it because like Matt said, like it adds more to the characters, and then you have that like I think that scene is great where he like puts it together that after he says, "Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?" and he puts it together that that's what the killer of his parents said, and you have that flashback where he sees him, and he that guy, whoever they cast as young Jack Nicholson, looks exactly like him, so that
oh my god,
so that really drove the point home, and I think it adds like more tension between them. I like it.
I think the one thing I do want to add is that I think it was Matt, you mentioned this when we were watching the movie.
Sorry, real quick, Hugo Blick is the young Jack Napier. I just wanted to say that. Sorry, continue.
Shout out.
When you first see him, Hugo Blick, it just doesn't click that it's like if it is him, if it is Joker or not, and then like when he gives the smile after like shooting them was like, oh, that's him. That's
exactly.
Which was, I think that's something that I think is like really like you can get the general idea of like the facial features. Okay, he looks similar to Jack Nicholson, so okay, we can assume that he is Jack, but it's just interesting to see that it's like when you see the smile, it's like such an uncanny resemblance to like Joker that it's like, oh, that's just I think it's just such a neat piece of imagery that they managed to get just out of one actor, and just to see that, even it's just such a small part, but that's still incredible.
It was incredible. Like as soon as he smiled, it just clicks that like, oh my god, they look so similar.
I'm interested to hear that because I don't feel necessarily negative about it, but I feel more negative than you guys. I'm kind of neutral in that I don't think it adds anything. I think they're already kind of the antithesis of each other, and I think there's already a natural connection there between crime creating pushing Bruce Wayne into being Batman, and Batman creating people like the Joker. I don't know that it feels a little bit like an obligatory, we have to have an origin connection there. I don't hate it. It doesn't like hurt the movie for me, but in general, I definitely prefer it to just be Joe Chill. Though again, this is an isolated thing in its world, like I get it. But I just don't feel like it adds anything. It's just kind of, it's like a non-factor to me. It's just kind of there. Like, okay, I never had really an emotional reaction to it, positive or negative. But then the other thing I wanted to bring up was Batman's no-kill rule or lack of no-kill rule. And that's something that I think we'll discuss in just about every Batman iteration going forward. So I want to try to avoid getting sucked into the discussion about how Nolan handles it, how Snyder handles it, how Reeves handles it. But within Burton's largely, I would say, just kind of ignoring of it, where, like, obviously there's points where he does try to save Jack, he does try to save certain things, but he also very clearly blows up criminals in the Axis plant, and Joker dies himself. And I think you could say that both of those are, well, those people could, like, Joker could have just let go of the helicopter and he wouldn't have died, or those guys could have tried to get away, like, you know, he's not responsible, he was there to blow up the building, he wasn't trying to kill them. But in general, it is a different take. It is a Batman that seems to not really be worried about that at the very least. It's not ever mentioned per se, that no kill rule, and I just wanted to know what everyone's thoughts on, in isolation, the handling of it in this movie and of Burton's Batman, while trying to avoid getting sucked into conversations for movies we're going to cover later anyway.
The one thing I wanted to add, I didn't give my opinion when it came to...
Oh, I'm sorry, please.
Joker being the killer of his parents. I just realized that, and I was going to say, like, yeah, I'm probably a little bit more negative about it, honestly. I don't mind the idea of them being a little more connected, and I think it works well for the movie, and that's fine. But, like, I like the mystery behind it more than anything else, of Joker being more the antithesis of Batman, and kind of, like, keeping that mystery of their, like, having that relationship and having it not be tied down to anything specific, more that it's just, like, they juxtapose each other, and that's kind of what's the neat thing about their relationship. But anyways, so knowing Batman, like, the comic itself, to me, I obviously am not going to be, like, a big fan of, like, him murdering people, like, just fucking like that. But it's the thing that gets me is that I can't really hold the film to it, because unless it's something that I feel that's explicitly stated in the film, or unless it's something that's, like, they explicitly say that it has to be done, like, you don't really see, like, Batman. You see him save criminals, like, you see him, but more in a theatrical way, that, like, he, in the beginning when they first show Batman, he dangles the one robber off the cliff of or off the top of the roof to kind of scare him. And then you have, like, it's just, I don't have a positive feeling about it, but I don't exactly have a negative feeling about it, mostly because it's not really established in the movie. I'd rather them keep towards something, or at least stand their ground one way or the other, so that you kind of have an idea of, like, why, because in the end, like, you know, one of the bigger things is about Batman being a vigilante is that, like, you know, the moral compass of where he stands, and kind of, like, how they go about portraying that, but they really don't. I think it's just one of the negatives of the film is they really don't pick a side, and because of that, it kind of just gets left open in the air. So, like, okay, we're gonna have him kill people anyways, because it doesn't really matter. And then again, like I said, they don't really establish it to begin with, so it's kind of like, I'm okay with it in the movie, but, like, in terms of, like, an adaptation, I don't have much of a positive view on it.
Yeah, I'm mostly the same way. Like, I'm not really a fan of Batman killing people, though I can give this movie a pass, because, yeah, they don't really, like, you know, make it like a rule at the beginning, and that the Batman in this movie doesn't really, like, aim to kill people. Like, he does, like, generally, like, you know, choose to, like, let them live.
He did remotely control a car.
Exactly. See, that's, like, the only
the
thing.
That's, and then drop a bomb.
Yeah, exactly. That's like the only scene where I just see that I can just say, like, okay, there's, like, no justification for that. He, like, just straight up killed, like, a bunch of people. And
real quick, not that you could, I'm not saying this is the case, and not that it would justify it, because it'd still be carelessness, but you could make an argument that he may have just, like, set the thing to go drop bombs, in which case he's not
He didn't know
aware.
there would be people
Again,
there.
He still fucking killed people, like, but slightly different. Anyway, sorry, continue.
And then also in the scene in the finale where he was going against, like, a big bad, like one of Joker's henchmen, and in the climax of that fight scene, basically the guy punches Batman, and he falls down, like, a little hole. The bad guy then goes to see if he fell down or not. Out of nowhere, Batman, he, like, springs up and he puts the guy in the headlock and then throws them down the bell tower. And so I was like, oh, you just straight up killed that guy. But the Joker, I can see, like, he wasn't intending on killing him, even though he said he was going to kill him, right? For murdering his parents.
He says it in the moment, but at the end, when you look at him, he tethers him to the gargoyle, and his Joker's refusal to let go of the ladder and just be caught is what does it, because if he lets go of the ladder, he just dangles, he gets arrested, but he hangs on, the gargoyle comes with, and it weighs him down, and he falls and dies.
Yeah, so, like, Joker had a chance to live in this situation, but he chose ultimately to, like, escape, and that led to his death. So, yeah, that one wasn't really Batman's fault, but he killed, well, I can't really keep a count because I don't know how many people were in that access plan, but at least 2.
At least 2.
Well, how about Jason?
I'm going to be a little bit more critical than you guys were, because I think personally, like, something I love about the character of Batman is that role, because I think it's something that, shows his clear conviction, and that, whether or not you want to argue that, well, maybe it might be morally better to just kill certain people, whatever, what have you, I think it shows that he's convicted in his own ways, and I would have preferred them establish that. That being said, I do cut it some slack because they didn't establish it, like you guys said. They didn't establish the no-kill rule and then break it. But I still think that that's like a big part of his character and goes well and ties well into his character in general and the way his character is portrayed in this movie. So I think it would have just been better off had they established that and not had him killing anyone. The scene that really bothers me is the one where he just blows up the room full of people, because the Joker one, like Matt said, like he does make an effort to save the Joker and not have him die, but ultimately Joker won't accept that and dies anyway, so it's not really him killing the Joker, but like, you can't really justify blowing up a shitload of people.
Did everyone say their piece on it before I go? Because I don't want to prep the questions and cut Sean or someone else off again.
Yeah, we all had to say our piece.
Because to be honest, I don't care. I definitely prefer Batman to have the no-kill rule. I think it's an important part of the character, and I would never want it to go away within like mainstream continuity or whatever. But I think every interpretation is valid. If you're going to hand a thing off to a filmmaker, to an artist, I think you should let them make what they want to make, whether I agree with them, whether I like it or not. Again, we will all get into our thoughts on other directors, other filmmakers' interpretations of the character later, and what works and what doesn't work. But while I would not personally make the decision to have a no-kill Batman, I think the movie's fact that it doesn't really address it at all, almost to the point of like, these things happen and it's just kind of like, whatever. It's almost like easy to forget that he like killed people when he blows up the access plant or when he throws that guy down the stairwell, because it's just not like treated like that. And with all the comic bookiness, it's like almost easy to hand wave and be like, hey, you don't know what happened. There was nobody. Obviously, realistically, that's ridiculous, but also like, I don't know, I'm from the world of comic books. People survive crazy shit, but I just don't care. I think it handled it's not my pick, it's not my preference, but within what it did, I think it handled it fine. If it just chose not to worry about that realm of the character. And then real quick, just ultimately when it comes to comic book accuracy, I don't care about most things. I mean, sometimes when stuff's I'll get excited if something's like, ooh, I recognize that story element or that visual or that part, element of anything. But ultimately, and this is very subjective, as is all art analysis, film analysis, but even more so than most things, to me, it's just about vibes. I watched Batman 89, and I think it has the vibes of a Batman comic. Even if the origins are different, even if Batman doesn't have this no-kill rule, even if, insert change, it feels like a Batman movie. The way the Reeves movies... it feels like a Batman comic. The way the Reeves movies feel like a Superman comic. And granted, Batman comics are very wide-ranging and diverse, but to me, that's what matters, and that's what it succeeds in, even if it makes changes to... Joker's origin, his connection to Batman killing, still feels right to me, and that's what matters most, just for myself. Obviously, everyone's different.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, like fundamentally in the idea that, like, an artist should use their interpretation, whatever that interpretation is, and not be necessarily fully tied down to, the source material, because I think if you just one for one recreate the source material all the time, then it's like, what's the fucking point? Just go to the source material. It's just that for me personally, like you said, all art, criticism is subjective. And in my subjective mind, I think that was a poor decision, though artistically they executed it well to me because, like we said, they never established a rule. They never contradicted a rule. It just wasn't brought up, and he killed people.
One of the things I do want to mention about that I didn't realize until you said it, Jake, was that they don't linger on anyone Batman kills, but they linger on everyone that Joker kills, aside from the people in that like parade thing. They like linger on the news host that he kills. They linger on like the guy he shocked with the joy buzzer, but the couple of people that Batman kills, you see the plant blow up and that's it. You see the one guy get thrown down the whole flight of stairs in the building and that's it. And then like the only one you really see that they linger on, which you could argue whether it's Batman's fault or not, is Joker, and that's it. Which is just an interesting view that the hero is the one person whose murderous deeds we kind of like shove under the rug and kind of ignore, but the Joker and everybody he kills is kind of okay.
I mean, I do think if you were in court, you would successful argue all of Batman's kills as self-defense. They are all actively trying to kill him.
Yes. I know it's like, in terms of like, if you want to look at it from a moral standpoint, is it really killing people isn't good in general, but it's just I just think it's interesting to see that from like the movie's perspective of like, to make Batman look a little bit better, we're gonna like,
this isn't an ethics conversation. This is an art conversation, and whether or not we agree with the decision to have the protagonists kill and arguably kill very callously. It just right. You want to bring us home on that last paragraph, man?
Sure. So sometime later, Gordon announces that the police have arrested all of Joker's men and unveils the back signal. Dent reads a note from Batman promising that he will defend Gotham should crime strike again, and asks him to use the bat signal to summon him in times of need. Alfred takes Vicky to the Wayne Manor, explaining that Bruce will be a little late. She responds that she is not surprised, as Batman looks at the signal's projection from a rooftop, standing watch over the city. Very epic shot, by the way, of him just like looking over the city while like, the signal is in the background. Beautiful.
Two other shots that I want to bring up from the climax, mostly because I know you'll talk about them, is the Batwing shot as the Batwing ascends, peeking right in front of the moon, looking like a prototype bat signal before coming back down. Beautiful. So comic booky. And Joker's oversized, comically long pistol that he uses to shoot down the Batwing. Because Matt, I know you remarked during the movie that's your like favorite part. So I didn't know if you wanted to say. I was
going to get.
Okay, I didn't want to end this before you got to talk about your favorite thing.
Because I was going to ask for like everyone's closing thoughts, and mine is like, we didn't really talk about like the humor of the movie. The movie is actually very funny, and like some like the darker scenes are pretty funny, but like, it's like kind of like a dark humor way, obviously. But like there's multiple times in this movie while I was watching it, I laughed out loud, especially during the Joker scenes, because of how hysterical Jack Nicholson is as the Joker. Nicholson. Jack Nicholson is as the Joker. He's just so fantastic. All his lines, all his dad jokes. I just couldn't help but like, smile at them. It was amazing. And then like as like Jake said it before, like the cinematography was all amazing. Like not only of the Batwing flying in front of the moon, showing like the back signal on the moon, awesome shot, but also like they show ground level to where Joker is, and him just standing right in the middle with like the 200th anniversary bright sign behind him, and it's awesome. Like it's so pretty. And here's the thing, my opinion might be incredibly skewed from like just how much I'm praising this film, because we just came back from like 6 films of movie schlock, and during this movie I was just having such a fucking blast that like I don't want to build like too much expectations for this movie. This movie is incredible, but like just letting you know, I'm coming from a perspective where I for 6 weeks I watched shit and I just wanted something good, and when I got it, oh my god, it was such a liberating feeling.
I wanted to touch on the humor that Matt brought up and how this movie's funny. On one hand, I just wanted to say, like, I think that I love how funny it is at times, because I think, like, if you're gonna have a Joker adaptation, there has to be a good level of humor. Like, he's called the Joker, and he's a guy that looks like a clown. So yeah, obviously that's great, and it's also, like, the brand of comedy they use is, like, it's refreshing to look back on, because there's so many movies that come out, like, in more modern times, namely Marvel, but we don't have to get into that whole shitfest of their humor at times. It has this, like, certain brand of humor of, like, overstated humor of, like, the almost like the stereotypical sitcom of, like, well, that happened kind of humor, like wink at camera type shit, and, like, this was a lot more understated in the, like, it was just that things happened that were funny. It wasn't like every scene had to have a joke and this and that.
I think a good example of that is actually the gag about the TV people not wearing makeup when the Smilex stuff starts happening, and a TV anchor dies on air from the infected makeup, and then after that, every time they show TV anchors, they all look tired and they have pimples and everything because they can't cover up. And it's the type of thing, like, they don't like sit on it, and they don't, like, feel they need to point a finger at it. And if you're not really paying attention, you may not even, like, if you're only half watching, notice. But it's there, and it's a really funny visual gag.
Yeah, every time they show the anchors after that, I laughed, because I was like, they just look like shit, and that's hilarious. And it's, you know, it could be taken as some kind of commentary on the entertainment industry, but it's just, like, it's such an understated way of making humor. It's not, there's no comment, there's no, like, some guy like, wow, look at how shitty they look, you know. It's just what it is, and it's funny.
Yeah, I mean,
Why do I need to go?
well, I was gonna say a couple things that we didn't touch on that I just want to do a quick shout out for.
Why does everyone look at me immediately?
It looked like you were gonna say
Because
something.
you know why, Sean? Because everybody was hoping it wasn't gonna be me.
Well, no, because you're in my direct line of sight, so
But
I
it was
just...
all three of you at the same time.
I thought you were gonna say something.
And I was just like,
I talk the most, obviously, so I'm trying to defer to you. And then it didn't help that I looked up at Jason, and he was looking at you, so then I drew my eyes to you, and then all of a sudden we're just all looking at. And then I think Matt's probably looking in this way, and I'm
Listen.
looking at you.
I'm looking straight ahead. Sean's just in my line of sight.
We didn't talk at
Mind
all
you, I'm not complaining.
about Billy D. Williams. He's not in the movie that much, but Billy D. Williams is Harvey Dent. He's very good, and I just wanted to real quick express my heartbreak that we never got to see his turn into Two-Face.
Yeah, I meant to bring that up, too.
that is disappointing.
I also want to mention Michael Gough as Alfred, because we'll see if my opinion changes as we rewatch subsequent Batman movies, but I think off the top of my head, Michael Gough's Alfred is my favorite one. He's just so huggable and sweet.
Yeah, he's very...
And he's just so quietly there for Bruce. Big fan of his Alfred, so I just wanted to make sure to give those two guys a shout out, because they have a minor role, but they do a really good job with when they're in it.
He's such a, like, subtly nurturing father figure in this iteration that, like, you know, there's not, like, tons of scenes where, you know, there's a bond being shared or anything, but you just kind of feel the, you know, the fatherliness that he has and throughout the movie, and I think he's such a good actor in terms of doing that. I haven't seen him in anything else, but he's great at that.
I like a nice Alfred. I like a sweet Alfred that's like a good, nice father figure who's just there for him.
Yeah, like as Jason said before, like, they're not together that often in this movie, but, like, you feel the connection these two have for each other, and how much, like, Alfred cares for Bruce, and how, like, throughout the movie, like, he does try to take care of Bruce as best as he can, but he does, like, encourage him to, like, interact with people more, especially with Vicky, like exploring, like, his human side, actually interacting with other human beings, instead of being, like, a weirdo who stays up at night and, like, hangs upside down.
But yeah, I mean, like, I like the stereotypical father figure that he kind of puts on, like, especially when he's talking to Vicky and is like, when I was teaching Bruce to ride a horse. And it's like, that really does seem like a rich stereotype, but it is kind of funny to just see him being like, look at Bruce, he's a little weenie. So it's just, I don't know, it's just sweet to see him like be embarrassed, like try to make Bruce look like a human and kind of be like, hey, look at this thing that kind of humanizes him that happened. And like, I thought it was really cute of him when I knew him back then and I was teaching him then. So it's just a sweet little thing that's like an aside that's just such a small scene that just really brings a lot to it.
Also, the line where Bruce says, when Vicky asks about Bruce's family and he says, Alfred is my family, it's like, it's sad in some sense, but it's also sweet that he's just like, that's my family, it's just him.
But like, it's also the fact that like Bruce was unable to tell Vicky that he was Batman, so Alfred just steps in and just brings her into the Batcave, forcing that conversation to take place because he needs it.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Also, shout out Billy D. Williams. We didn't linger on that too much, but Billy D. Williams is such a legend.
We got to take every chance we get to cut Jake off.
We'll talk about Billy D. Williams more when we get to Batman Forever, in which he was cucked for the Two-Face role.
Well,
that is true.
Okay.
My heart will forever break, like Jake said about that. But I real quick want to say, do you guys know his full name?
No.
William December Williams Jr.
Beautiful. That was music to my ears. I'm not joking, by the way. That's a beautiful name.
We also need to do a quick acknowledgement, real quick, of Bruce Wayne in jeans. Just really crazy that there's a fit at this point, in one point in this movie, where Bruce Wayne is wearing like classic 80s fit, like blue jeans with like a plain brown belt and a black turtleneck sweater. And it's just funny because could you imagine them ever dressing Bruce Wayne up like that in a movie after this? Like, could you imagine if they tried to put Bale or Affleck or Pattinson in that fit, and it's fucking great?
I think it would look hot as fuck. I mean, he looks like The Rock. It's just incredible.
First of all, Robert Pattinson would eat that fit.
No, it's a good fit. It's a genuinely good fit, and it's the best he looks in the whole movie, but it's just so funny because he's like in the Batcave in blue jeans, and
Right.
you never, like, that's so opposite everything else that we subsequently have seen in Batman media.
Yes, and I understand that, but I'm just saying, Robert Pattinson would go crazy in that fit.
See, your eyes gravitated toward the blue jeans. My eyes gravitated toward the turtleneck because he was rocking that shit.
The only thing he needed was like a silver chain. He needed like a silver
He could
or
be
gold
Dwayne
chain.
The Rock Johnson.
On that note, do you guys want to do, favorite, least favorite, recommend?
Sure.
All right, so
Well, I was figuring Matt was going to go first since he kind of took the lead on this.
my mic was muted.
Oh, yeah,
so
that
I
was
was about to
it.
say something. I'm like, oh, well, there we go.
I can't wait till we figure out in post that Matt muted himself the entire time while reading the plot.
I made sure that it was unmuted.
I can vouch for him. I can see his screen and I can see the audio wave.
Okay, so my favorite scene is the Joker pulling out that long ass pistol out of his pants and shooting out the fucking Batwing. And honestly, I can't really think of like any dislikes with the movie. I just enjoyed the entire thing. Like, I was having a blast.
So yeah, I mean,
Wait,
like,
I'm assuming you recommend. Don't leave me in suspense here.
Oh shit, yeah.
Sorry, I just had to
If
be
you
sassy.
can't tell from all the praising I've been doing for the past hour, yes, I do recommend this film.
so yeah, best thing about this movie, to me, it's a mixture of the tone and the visualization of everything from like the comics to see it kind of like pop and come to life in this, and especially like with the cinematography and all the coloration that they have in this film, like how they do a great job of balancing like the dark blackness of like the shadows, and how you get a lot from like the different shades in this film, and how despite the fact that it's like a lot of bleak colors, it really manages to stand out a lot, especially when it comes to like being fairly muted in its color palette. So it's interesting to see that. So that's one of the things I genuinely love about it. And plus, again, like it being able to ride this tone of like staying between a goofy, funny like film, but also having like those serious, darker moments and managing to make all of that fit into one film, and make it work, as opposed to like something where like those two things really don't typically go hand in hand all the time. So it's just nice to see it like come together as a whole. Least favorite thing? That's kind of hard. That's kind of hard with this one. I think of anything like, and this isn't even like a problem with the film itself. It's just some things in it are dated. I mean, like it's it does some fairly, like, it does have a very weird male gazy kind of side to it that I kind of don't like towards the beginning of it, and it's just like there, and like just on top of it, it's just some of it is just like obviously it looks good for the time that it came out on, but like just dated. That's really it. It's nothing that's literally that bad. It's something that isn't like terrible to watch. So it's like none of it's bad. None of it's like egregiously bad. So that I guess that's like my worst part. Recommend? Yes, 100%, yes.
I'm gonna start with least favorite things real quick, just because we didn't talk about anything negative much, as we shouldn't, and I just kind of want to like go through them quickly and not linger on them. I mean, I'm not crazy about how they use Gordon or really don't use Gordon. He's just kind of a dunce in this, and like ACAB, but like also Gordon's cool. It's fictional, I can say that. I think Vicky and Bruce isn't like the most developed romance. I don't think it's necessarily bad, but it is kind of like, when you think about the number of days, you know, it takes place, and it's a little bit quick, but you know, I can live with that. I actually largely like a lot of their scenes together, so it's not a major issue. The biggest negative to me is just them not knowing about the Wayne parent murder is kind of weird. I get that they're like the same age as Bruce, so they would be kids too, but like, I don't know. My mom was like like you talk to someone who was a kid when JFK got assassinated, and they fucking remember it. Like, it just it feels a little contrived. Like, I get it's also pre-internet, but it just seems weird that these investigative journalists had this much of a hard time figuring that out about Bruce Wayne, especially like you would have done some cursory research before the gala. I don't know. It feels a little contrived as a way to like get the audience to go through the origin slowly rather than burning through it quickly. But again, all of these things aren't a big deal when you're talking about a movie that's so enjoyable, that is so visually striking, that has, for my money, I think the Batmobile and the Batsuit are gotta be in the running for the best ones in live action. I think it's easily the best Batwing in live action. I think Keaton and Nicholson are both in the conversation for best at that role. In the conversation, I'm not giving an outright answer, but I think they're both perfect, and it's hard not to say one of them isn't my favorite, but I'm actually going to sidestep that a little bit, as perfect as they are, and say my favorite element of the movie is the Danny Elfman score, along with the Prince music, just because there's so many like leitmotifs throughout that just like you play it for like a second or two and immediately like, oh, Batman. It's so evocative, and it's so intrinsically enshrined that like I'll read a Batman comic and I hear that shit in my head, and you just can't remove it. There's no removing it. It is timeless and flawless. So that's, to me, my absolute favorite thing about the movie. And of course, honestly, this edges out Superman 2 for me as my favorite thing we've watched for the podcast so far. Absolutely recommend. Are you crazy?
Yeah, you took my favorite thing. That's what I was going to say.
You could double down on it.
Well, I will double down, but I also have another thing that I want to touch on. But I do want to talk about the music a little bit, because I think it's great how, like, Danny Elfman's score is, like, so sweeping and beautiful and anthemic almost. And then, like, you have the scenes where, like, the original Prince songs that he made just for the movie come in, and it's so fun and upbeat, because, you know, Prince is fucking incredible, as everyone knows, but it's such a, you know, dichotomy between those two things that I think it's fun to have, like, certain scenes where, you know, this big orchestral sweeping score versus, you know, fun dancey Prince music. But my other favorite thing that I wanted to bring up is just like the almost mystery to it in the beginning, how like in the beginning we don't get a lot of clear looks at Batman, and then after Jack Nicholson, or Jack Napier, I guess if we're using the character's name, becomes Joker, like, we don't see his, like, that first scene when he's with the surgeon, he fucking, you only see him from behind, you don't see his face, and then even when he comes in and kills, that guy, I can't remember
Grissom.
his name. Yes. He walks in, he has, like, the long-brimmed hat, and there's a shadow on his face, you can't quite see it. I like how it kind of keeps you in suspense and doesn't give you everything at once, but still moves things along as to not feel like too slowly paced. Least favorite thing is tough, because there's so much I love about this, but I think my least favorite is probably just, and it's a nitpicky thing, but I do agree that I think the romance between Bruce and Vicky was a little rushed, but it's not a big deal, because I thought that they had a lot of good chemistry together and good scenes together. It just felt a little fast in terms of pacing. And that being said, abso-fucking-lutely, I recommend this goddamn movie. I love this movie with my whole heart so much. I love Batman, and I love this movie. And this movie means so much to me on a personal level. I implore everyone to watch it. Also, the day we're recording this, it's Charlie XCX's birthday. Happy birthday, bitch.
Okay, so if you can't tell, we all fucking love this movie, and it's a resounding yes for recommendations. So thank you to Vod Morte. That's how you pronounce it?
I don't know. Every week I say I don't know how to say his Twitter handle, so I always spell it too. But it's a Paul Alo for Sorry, continue.
I'm just gonna say what I see. So it's Vod Morte at VODMORTE. Thank you, and you can follow Jake.
Thank you for the channel art. For all of the art for the podcast specifically.
Thanks.
Great. We shout out to Twitter so that if anyone's interested, they can go check out his work.
Yeah, it's cool.
Not
I guess.
just a random shout out.
Shit.
Shout out to Alo. That's it.
He's just a nice guy.
Yeah, pretty cool.
You can follow Jake on Letterboxd.
Are you
as
doing my
he
plug
wrote
for
down
me?
there. His handle is Jake JAKE Walter WALTER 98. And Jason, plug that song that you won't finish.
Thanks for plugging my shit, man.
First of all, let me tell you, it is finished. It's just not out yet. Alright, I make music, made the intro outro music. It's from a song called Pins and Needles. It'll be coming out in probably September or October with a few other songs that I'm working on. It'll be like a 3 or 4 song EP called Cult Classic. Don't have all the details figured out. I made the artwork, I just have to like finalize it and post it. But that being said, you can follow me on Twitter at _UpsidesPA. I remembered it this time. On Instagram at @TheUpsidesPA, and my SoundCloud is just The Upsides. You can listen to my shit if you want.
All right. If you are interested in continuing to check us out, you can follow us at @illiterate_pod on both Twitter and Instagram. You can also reach out to us at culturalliteratepod@gmail.com if you want to ask a dumb question or you want to hate on us. And all episodes will be on YouTube as well as our I can't say it for some reason, as well on our
All the episodes are on. They're on Spotify. They're on Apple Podcasts. They're on Anchor, and they're on our YouTube channel. Culture Illiterate Podcast is the channel name.
Okay, what Jake said. And episodes are bi-weekly. Okay, I can't say words now. It's too late. Episodes are bi-weekly, so we will return in 2 weeks for Batman Returns. Talk to you then. Bye.